Now, sometimes we have quadratic inequalities, and this is the new lesson that we're going to learn today. Notice that this quadratic is made up of a linear expression times a linear expression. That's why it's a quadratic. And that it's greater than or equal to 0. And 0 is significant because 0 separates the positives from the negatives. So let's consider what's interesting about this product. There are two critical points. One critical point is when x equals -2, because this is the value that gives 0 in this bracket. And the other critical value is 3, because when x is 3, this bracket is equal to 0. And let's consider the values of x plus 2 alone. Let's begin here. When x takes a value of 3, then x plus 2 is certainly positive. And when x takes a value greater than 3, it's positive. When x takes a value greater than -2, it's a positive. When x takes a value of -2, it's a 0. And when x is less than -2, the value of x plus 2 is a negative. So this bracket is negative in this region, 0 at this point, and positive everywhere else. Let's consider x minus 3. The critical point that matches this bracket is 3. So when x is 3, the value of this bracket is a 0. When x is greater than 3, the value of this bracket is positive. When x is less than 3, the value of this bracket is a negative. It's negative here, it's also negative here, and it's negative here. Now, what matters is the product of the first bracket times the second bracket, and we want it to be greater than or equal to 0. We don't really care about the values, we care about the signs only. So let's consider the product. X plus 2 times x minus 3. In this region, positive times positive will give me a positive. At 3, positive for the bracket of x plus 2 times a 0, which comes from x minus 3, is a 0. In this region, between the -2 and the 3, x plus 2 is a positive, times a negative, it gives you a negative. At -2, 0 times a negative is a 0, and below -2, negative times negative is a positive. Now, you are looking for something that is 0 or more. So you're looking for this region or this region. That's where the product is 0 or more. And this region and this region, they are separate. There are two regions here. So your solution is x is greater than or equal to 3, or x is less than or equal to -2. This can be done in a much shorter way. This is a pretty complicated way to do things, but this is the concept. That's what we are doing. We are checking the signs of each bracket, and then we are checking the product. Let's do this in a more efficient way. So let's erase everything here, and let's do the process again. We begin by drawing the number line. What are the two critical points? Well, they are what makes the expression a 0. So it's -2 and 3. So we have 3 regions on the number line so far. We take a value here and we test. Let's say it's 5. When x is 5, this bracket is a positive. It's 7, but I don't care about the 7. It's a positive. And this bracket is a positive as well because it's 5 minus 3. This bracket is a positive times this bracket is a positive, so this gives me a positive value here. At 3, this bracket is a 0, and this bracket, I don't care because it's going to be multiplied by 0, so I have a 0 here. In this region, we take a number between -2 and 3. And the best idea is to take 0 because it's easier to calculate. When x is 0, this bracket is positive and this bracket is negative. And the product of positive times negative is negative. And then in this region, when x is -2, this bracket is a 0 times whatever. It's going to be a 0. And finally, you take a value here. Let's say -10. When x is -10, this bracket is negative, and this bracket is negative, so the product is positive. Now you ask yourself, what am I looking for? I'm looking for something that is greater than or equal to 0. So let's represent our solutions. That's what I want. That is determined by the inequality sign. So how do I write my answer? There are 2 regions, so I have 2 inequalities. X is greater than or equal to 3, or x is less than or equal to -2. Let's do another one. In this case, I have a quadratic, but it's greater than 6. That won't work. The 0 must be present on one side of the inequality to allow me to factorize and test around the 0 where we have positives and negatives. So this can be rewritten as x squared minus 5x minus 6 is greater than 0. I factorize x and x. The signs are different, and the greater factor is with the negative, and there we have it. So my 2 critical points are indicated first on the number line. They are -1 and 6. And since they are critical points, then I know that I have a product of 0 here and 0 here. Because when x is 6, this bracket is 0, so the product equals 0. And when x is -1, this bracket is 0, so the whole product is 0. And again, I take values. Take x, for example, as 10. This bracket is positive times this bracket, which will also be positive, and the product is positive. In this interval between -1 and 6, take x as being equal to 0. Then you have positive times negative, and that's negative. And when x is, say, -5, this bracket is negative, and this bracket is negative, so the product is positive. And we are looking for values that are greater than 0. So this is my solution only. And the way to write it is x is greater than 6, or x is less than -1.